Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To some and peace out to the rest of you. Black heart, black mind, black ant. Again, hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Let me go ahead and make this one brief as much as possible. There is a cycle that ruins the formation of couples in our community. Now, it happens amongst white communities too, but like I've said, I celebrate that. This is information for you. This cycle is one in which being by yourself contributes to a low relationship IQ. It will lower the relationship IQ of even a man that previously knew how to be. In other words, you get used to being by yourself. Now, many of us actually wind up with perpetually low relationship IQs. We don't raise them because we simply don't go through enough women to get that experience. And if we do, we don't go through enough women that have even so much as two other options in men. We're not allowed to learn. Guys and all the women selected, they're allowed to learn all these things. And even in there, some things they don't learn. In a nutshell, being single will lower your relationship IQ. Even if you had a high one before, then you were single for a long time for whatever reason. Then, when you have a low relationship IQ and there's a woman that might be interested, let's say she's curious or interested, what can change that is the low relationship IQ. She sees you just certain things you don't know. Either you never learned or you forgot, whatever the case is, you don't know them at the time that y'all first start getting to know each other. In addition to the hyper scrutiny that you're already going to face simply because she's a woman and you're a man, and then add to that, you're both in the West. So she can do that. She's trained to do it. Especially if she's any kind of nice to look at before you even get to other things she might bring to the table. This is cyclical. The majority of men will be locked into exactly that cycle. I am bitter on your behalf, gentlemen, because you shouldn't have to deal with this, especially from the same demographic of women that are saying that good black men, decent black men are so rare and so hard to find. They're not saying that when you're young. They're not saying it when they're young. Actually, they're listening to others say that. They might repeat it, but they're not coming out of their own experience saying this when they're young. And as far as I'm concerned, it is not your job to prove them wrong that there's not really that much of a shortage. No, you know what? There may be, but it's not as bad as what they say, especially at a young age. It ain't your job to prove it. They're looking for you at all ages to know things from experience that they didn't want to have anything to do with you getting. In other words, they all want you to be well practiced, but they don't want to be one of the practiced dummies. Those are two mutually exclusive standards right there. So when I talk about the mutual exclusivity, there's a long laundry list of it, but that's another one. They cyclically behave in such a way as to leave most men incapable of dazzling them, so to speak, or keeping their interest. It's not because they don't want to be thoughts and sluts. It's simply because they don't want to be a way that you learn things about ladies that you did not know before. They want you to know, but they don't want to be the one to teach you. In their mind, they're thinking, well, why would I train him for some other bitch? That's how they see it, how they would say it. I would say the only reason why maybe you should is because of what you demand in the first place. That's all. I would say to one of them, if they were going to logically think about this, consciously think about it, and then ask me, Black, why should we do this? My answer would be, the only reason you really should is because you demand that a man have this. So if you demand a man have this, then you need to contribute to men having this. This knowledge of what to do and how to charm you and dazzle you and all that, sweep you off your feet. You want a man to know how to do it, he's going to have to learn it from somewhere. So the reason is because you demand that other bitches train this man for you, so you're going to have to train some man for other bitches. That's why. Or you can simply drop this requirement that he just seemed to magically know shit that you would never tell a man, but you want him to know. You could drop that requirement. And then, of course, you can say, I don't have to play that game because I'm not demanding that I benefit from others playing it. But that cycle is there. And I want you gentlemen to understand that. And that right there is reason enough that you should never, ever be convinced to try to develop some kind of game to get one of them. The type of women that come from cultures demanding game, the kind of women that legitimize the part of their culture that demands so-called game from men, are the kind of women you should be running away from. Whether it means you have to get a passport or whether it means you merely have to move to another part of the same country, which is very unlikely in the U.S. Point I'm making is that all of them, if they find just your lack of experience with other women to be a problem, all of them need to be cut loose, categorically. And this is why I've been saying passports, gentlemen, and leave these Western broads alone. Just leave them alone. Make it such that if they want to get you, they need to be at an airport in another country waiting on you, and they need to have their lives together when they do. When they show up at the airport waiting on you to come through customs, they need to already be there, have their stuff together, and have learned from those other women. And even then, what reason would you have to trust them? They need this. You need this. But understand, when these reverse pimps are coming along trying to tell you, man, just you need to learn this game and do this with X, Y, and Z. You just need to be more. When they come and tell you all that stuff, they're reverse pimping you. Because see, when they pimp these women to you, you pay. When they turn around and they reverse pimp you to the women, you pay. Either way it goes, you pay. If you got to pay and you got to have all this stuff, why not go somewhere where you're going to get more in exchange for it? You see, gentlemen, all I'm telling you is why it is that I said that you've been driven away. You might as well go ahead and walk off, because you were driven there anyway. You don't have to hate them. You shouldn't. You shouldn't even mistreat them per se. You simply say to them, if I have all the game in the world, I'm not going to spit it at you. What for? Ain't no game in the world that's going to get what I want from you. Another thing too, infantry skills is right. Most of you are not going to be able to do this from a position of bitterness. He's right about that. I'm simply saying that I myself am bitter on your behalf, and I don't apologize to these ladies for it, because I've been bitter on behalf of women that had to go through all kinds of hell and high water with the wrong niggas. Come to find out, they had options, they had choices, they just chose wrong. And then come to find out they didn't choose wrong even though the dude was wrong and they didn't know it. No, they chose wrong because this nigga was wrong. So if I was bitter on their behalf for them, what I'm supposed to do? Lose that on your behalf? No, this ain't about you being bitter, gentlemen. He's right. Y'all aren't, most of you. And if you are, you're perfectly justified in it. But many of you aren't. A lot of the bitter guys really ain't online talking a whole lot. I know one guy that was bitter. He got over the bitterness, but he still says, I'm still not going to walk back into the game and be taken advantage of. Another one I know is bitter, and he's confessed to assaulting somebody. I think he would admit that he's bitter. He seems to feel like sisters drove him into the rectums of trans women. I'm not saying names, but that's where these are guys that may be bitter themselves. I'm reserving the right to be bitter on your behalf, but I'm not going to prioritize that. You see, and I'm not even really discussing a whole lot of this with many ladies. Miss Philosophie is an exception for a reason. And what I came to understand and learn from her was that she knew of only a particular sector of the black manosphere. That's all she knew. And also because, like me, she came up in a very functional context, surrounded by dysfunction, but her context was functional, and I came up the same way. So I understood, because it took me years to know about this because of that. It took me years, man. And my own father, couldn't tell me certain things because he didn't know. He was unaware of certain things, and then later he realized them. But when he told me, I already knew. But that's another story. He told me everything he knew to tell me at the time that he knew it. But, you know, she and I came up in similar scenarios in which a lot of this stuff, it is dysfunctional to us. A lot of what goes on in the community. But in most cases, I don't get into discussions with them. They don't come to me for them, and I don't entertain them. So my bitterness does not matter to them, but those of you that are in discussions with them, like I used to be, understand infantry skills is right about that. That bitterness will be used against you as deserved as it will be. If you just get bitter and angry, you won't be able to think, to formulate and articulate what it is you want to tell them, how dumb they've behaved. Now, that's not really the important thing, because many of them are not going to change anyway. Many of them are going to do a lot of wicked and dumb things subconsciously. Then you tell them about it, you make them aware of it, and then they just double down and say, I'm definitely going to do it now, because it takes all kind of character fortitude to do something different. I'm not doing that. And they get upset. So they double down when they become aware of it. What really matters is your ability to articulate these things to the younger men in your lives, your nephews, your sons, your younger brothers, your cousins. The bitterness, you may feel it, but if you let it think for you, will make you less articulate, whether in written or spoken form. And you don't need that. You need to be able to explain the things you can observe the way I just explained to you, how cyclical this thing is between not being picked and developing a low relationship IQ or being stuck with one, and how each one supports the other. And the ladies, when they become aware of this, they're not going to change as a majority. Certainly not the ones that have not yet hit the wall. That goes back to us because we've made things too easy, but that's another topic. Infantry skills, he was right about that. I maintain the right to be bitter on your behalf, but like he's saying, they'll dismiss the argument, but I'm not in the arguments with them. You may be, you may not be. And if you aren't, you're still in discussions with younger men in your family. At least I hope you are. And so the bitterness should not rise up and start to speak for you, because it does not articulate well. The mind that can explain without bitterness at the forefront is the one that will most justify the bitterness. And it will most help young men to avoid the bitterness before it begins and prevent it. I hope that one day this is no longer necessary as a recording. Until then, I hope it helps. Thank you for listening. Black heart, black mind, blackout, assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual non-select bitter male power just because they don't like it.